How you doing? It's the Butcher here, and today I have another video. We just got the patch notes for both the Season 4 PTR and the class balancing changes coming with that. And this is, let's just get out of the way, this is a beefy blog here. And I'm going to go over all of it in this video. I'm going to try to keep it as condensed as possible. There's a lot to go over here. I'm not going to go over stuff that was previously mentioned really in the campfire chat unless we got more information on it or I have certain thoughts. I'm really just going over a lot of the new things, and for the class updates, I've already read through this, kind of going over what I see are pretty significant changes and kind of combining those because a lot of them are just increasing certain types of skills. For example, grenade skills on Rogue just across the board got basically a huge buff. But anyway, let's jump into it. And I think this is a pretty good blog, I guess, first and foremost. I like a lot of the changes. There are some things I don't like. But first and foremost, we have kind of some more information on the itemization. Most of it is what they already said, but right here we have the new affixes and positioning of affixes. So a new one is resource per second, which is pretty interesting. Resource on kill. You have a lucky hit to apply vulnerable, which could be really nice for classes or builds that struggle to apply vulnerability. Life per hit, I think we saw that in the campfire chat on one of the pieces of gear. And then basic skill ranks. Previously, I believe the only way to get basic skill ranks was either through something like a Shaco or through certain unique items. So that's pretty nice because I would like there to be a bigger variety of builds, and that would definitely help with that. So they mentioned again that the legendary items drop from any enemy level 95 plus, or I'm sorry, the 925 items, any enemy level 95 plus. This one is so interesting to me. I've mentioned this several times now. It's good, but it takes away from some of the harder content, in my opinion. I guess I like it, but I wish maybe for harder content there was a greater chance that you had higher rolls than your affixes. They don't mention anything about that. It just feels like when I do harder content, I want to be rewarded more. And there is some ways of doing that, but I guess that's one way. I'm fine with it all being 925. That at least makes it all viable, I guess. But maybe higher gear content gives you better affix rolls, like you can't roll a minimum roll or something like that. I don't know. That's just my opinion. So they mentioned gems here. They kind of mentioned this before, but they did mention specifically core stats that they're going to be adding. So I'm guessing one of the gems now is going to be just damage to core skills increase. And they said the conditional bonuses, so like I'm assuming they're going to condense critical strike damage instead of having critical strike to crowd controlled and critical strike to vulnerable. It's probably just going to be one gem for critical strike damage. Okay, and then as we go down here, this is all stuff they mentioned. They go over the tempering system again. We pretty much know basically everything here. They did again mention that it can be rerolled up to the temper reroll limit, and they don't mention any way to get specifically the one you're looking for, even if you can't control a roll, which is definitely something I have my worries about. Mentioned greater affixes, the master working, basically all the same stuff we saw as well as the Codex of Power in the campfire chat. Then they go into Hell Tides, and this is something they went over. And it's better. Before I go into this, I guess I just want to say, so it's definitely better, and they took a lot from the Fam Tides. I think I'm just so burnt out in Hell Tides that I just kind of wish this system has gone through so much. It's been so heavily criticized. I kind of wish they just scrapped it, honestly. They did make it better, though. They have this threat detector, basically this meter up here, and when you fill it up, you're going to get all these enemies. So more density equals more of the cinders, so you're able to go open the chest. And they also drop exquisite blood, they mentioned in the campfire chat. And then once you get that, it will reset. And then they have this ritual, which is basically, I think this is basically what people are going to do. It's kind of just like the Vamptides where people did, and even the latest season when everyone was doing the thing with the Son of Malthus. I think there should be a big group around this thing, basically. And what this is, so you can get these baneful hearts by opening torture gifts. So you'll get a bunch, you'll go over this and kind of just take turns. And then once you summon this right here, it'll be a bunch of enemies coming at you, basically the same way the Vamptide thing worked, the ritual thing. A bunch of enemies coming at you, and then at the end, you're going to get these Blood Maiden, which is like the boss. And then they'll offer you some rewards. So I think that's what people are really going to do. I would guess it's going to be pretty much everyone's going to be around this thing taking turns like it is with a lot of these systems. But I think that's a pretty good change. But again, like I said, I think I'm just burnt out on Hell Tides, and I wish they just introduced a new system, honestly. Even just like a reskin of it. I'm just tired of seeing that red thing and having to go there, I'm not going to lie. Next, they have the pit here. Basically the same thing as they said in the campfire chat. So once you get to World Tier 4, it's a Tier 46 dungeon you're going to have to complete, which isn't too difficult. And then you'll be able to go in the pit. And they did mention here, which I don't think they mentioned in the campfire chat. So they did mention death will affect the timer, but now your first death is 30, second death is 60, third and more is 90. So the more you die, the more time will be run off. And what I found interesting here is actually right here. So while you do it, the faster you're able to go through, you'll be able to get more tier unlocks. So if you do it super fast with 6 minutes left to spare, you get 2 additional tier unlocks. If you do it with 4 to 6 minutes left to spare, you get 1 additional. So that's pretty interesting. That's new. Everything else is pretty much what they mentioned before. They did say, so if you're doing it with a group, the player who summoned the actual pit has the biggest chance of, or gets more of the materials. So that's a bit interesting. I think the things to summon the pits, I forget what they're called now. I think they're going to be pretty abundant. So solo might be the better way to do this if you're not getting the lion's share of the loot here. But I'm not sure. We'll have to see how that plays out. Obviously, we'll get our hands on it in under a week now. Next, they obviously mentioned Andariel coming as a Uber boss. It's the same thing as Duriel. And then they go into a little bit more about these tormented echoes. So these are like the Uber bosses that they kind of talked about. So you need these Stygian stones. And they drop from... It says they also drop more rewards. I don't really know what that means. But these... They showed it dropped when he completed... It was like a tier 3, I believe, of the pit. It already dropped him like a Stygian stone. I don't know how many you'll need to summon these. But we'll see. So the tormented, the Uber bosses will be level 200. All it says is all items dropped are item level 925. They did say you would have a better chance at like Uber uniques and stuff. So we'll have to see about that. And we'll have to see how this works in a group as well too. And then this is a little bit disappointing right here. So if these things really are challenging, then I don't like this. So it says defeating your first Tormented Echo drops 1 Resplendent Spark as a first time reward. So I think that means defeating any of the Tormented Echoes, you get 1, and anyone you defeat after that, that's not good. I thought you would at least get 1 per different boss, but it seems like you just get 1 in total, and I would like these to be hard enough that a Resplendent Spark would be a good reward for it. But that doesn't appear to be the case. Oh, I don't know how hard they are, but you definitely won't be getting more than 1 at the moment. Again, this is a PTR, so we will be able to provide our feedback. We'll go over that in a sec. But it basically mentions what they're offering. This is all stuff they mentioned in the campfire chat, so you can boost your character up to max level, get all your Paragon nodes and everything like that. And then they go into how to provide feedback. And I think it is important if you are playing it and you do still like Diablo to provide feedback. I hope they listen to it. If not, then what are we doing? But basically what you want to do is you can use the in-game feedback tool that they're going to have, or you can go to the Diablo 4 PTR forums. And then it says you press the escape key while in game to bring up the report a bug menu, and you can select the drop down for the in-game feedback tool. That's pretty nice, I think, so you don't even have to leave the game, but you can also go here. Let's say you make a list and go there and post it. And I hope people do provide constructive criticisms, so hopefully, we as a community can help Diablo 4 turn a corner. How to install it? It is, like they mentioned, it is just BattleNet PC. That's the only way you'll be able to play it. And then down here we have the full class changes and patch notes. And this is a lot. You can see my little scroll bar here. This is huge. I'm going to try to condense this as much as possible. But it is pretty beefy, so bear with me. So the first thing they mentioned here, this Tyrell's Might. I thought during the campfire chat they said it was an uber unique chest armor because it had like a bunch of defensive capabilities. I believe this is the same one, but now that you just mentioned unique, then there's this other unique boots for all classes. It says just casting a skill has a up to 30% chance to cast a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that's currently a cooldown. Doesn't really inspire me much. Could be useful for some builds. And a couple new aspects for all classes here. This one, I guess it's for low life builds. You'll be able to freeze enemies and provide vulnerable to them, but you got to be depending on what kind of roll you get, below like 60% life. So maybe a defensive thing for like hardcore or for low life builds potentially. And then this is pretty interesting here, specifically for rogues. So lucky hit, you damaging enemies up to a 20% chance to daze them for 2 seconds. There's a lot of things you can do with daze with rogue. And then you have you deal 5 to 20% increased damage to dazed enemies. So that's pretty significant. If you stack that with like the smoke grenade and stuff, you get some pretty beefy numbers right there. So then we have the barbarian here. So a lot of what they're doing is, I believe it's called not walking arsenal. I forget what it's called. Where you get the 3 guys, called the engines. Sorry, you get the 3 guys to come and they do damage. It's very good early game, but falls off later game. And it looks like they've done several things to make that better. This one, so now this is unique pants that basically buff that, and then there's some stuff down below too. There's an aspect as well that makes them do more damage, I believe, and I think they just base jump the damage, or base buff the damage as well. We have a double swing gloves here. So after casting double swing 4 times, your next double swing will hit 2 additional times, each dealing 10 to 25% increased damage. So the damage isn't so much double swing's problem, but as we go down, you'll see it's more of a AoE, but you'll see, I think combining double swing with Dust Devils might be really good. They did mention before that they were buffing things like Dust Devils and Dancing Bolts to scale higher, the higher basically weapon you have and things like that. So this could be really good in conjunction with that. And again, there's more things for Dust Devils. They're putting a big emphasis on Dust Devils. So for Druid, we have a couple new uniques. So this one, it's just basically buffing Landslide. And then this one right here is a little bit interesting, the Wild Heart Hunger. So when he shapeshifts into a werewolf or werebear, you gain Wild Heart for 5 seconds. Wild Heart grants 1 to 1.5 increased damage when shapeshifting skills. With shape-shifting skills, Jesus Christ, every 2 seconds, stacking 20 times. So what I'm wondering about this is, does it keep going kind of the way some of like the key passes and stuff keep going if you're using either Mad Wolf's Glee or the one for, I think it's Insatiable Fury, I believe, or the other one for Werebear, where that's your normal form? You basically just have this 20% up basically all the time, because that would be really good. I'm assuming this is multiplicative, but we'll have to see. If not, then it probably won't be that good. But I guess if you constantly shapeshift, and there's some changes to some things down below, that could be really good. If you're constantly shapeshifting between werebear and werewolf, that could make this quite good. And we'll have to obviously see, it's boots, so hopefully they have like movement speed, things like that. So they have an aspect for Maul here. Doesn't encourage me very much. So they have a unique amulet for Blight to make Blight a little bit better. This one's interesting right here. These unique gloves for Blood Surge. Blood Surge was actually pretty good already, and this basically just makes it better. You're gonna you consume corpses to cause mini novas that deal damage, and its damage is increased by 10% per target drained by initial cast up to 50. If that's multiplicative, that's a lot. And then its damage is increased by 20% for each corpse consumed. And I don't know if this stacks on, if there's a limit on that. I'm not exactly sure that's going to work, but that could be super powerful. Blood Surge could be really, really good. And then they just, an aspect here, there's a bunch of things for minions. Basically, moral story is minions got a huge buff. I'm trying to keep this as short as I can, even though it's probably going to run probably close to a half hour because there's a lot here. So some new unique items for rogues. Rapid fire now logs exploding arrows that deal increased damage. That's nice. I think it could have used a little bit of a buff since they buffed Barrage, but they also buffed Barrage again. And then there's a unique ring for Flurry as well too that kind of interacts with grenade skills. I'm actually interested in this one because grenade skills got buffed basically across the board. And then new aspect, another new one for Barrage. So they now pierce through one enemy, and they now have up to 20% increased attack speed. So Barrage is getting buffed again, which, I mean, I think it's going to be really good this season. Sorcerer, this is the unique amulet they showcased during the campfire chat, where your conjurations basically spawn more frozen orbs. They're going all in on frozen orbs. This one's a little bit weird. It has to do with firewalls and casting fire bolts through firewalls to do more damage. A little bit strange. This one's actually interesting. I kind of like the idea of this. You can deal a ton more damage when you have no defensive skills on your action bar. Kind of the meta for Sorcerer for the longest time has just been to have a ton of defensive skills on there. I guess except for the gauntlet where you were just teleporting everywhere. But this could be pretty interesting. I wonder what kind of builds people can make with that if it's a big impact. And then they tried to buff Incinerate again. Don't think it'll make too much of an impact. They nerfed Banished Lord's Talisman. They nerfed to Bolts. They said they were doing that. I think both of those probably needed to, specifically to Bolts. It was just used on too many things, and it's fun being powerful, but when you're forced to use that on basically every build, it kind of stops being fun. So I like that change overall. So Disobedience right here. People didn't like how they falled off independently, so I didn't mind it that much. I thought, and then they nerfed the amount gained from 25 to 40% when I believe it was 66 to 1.1, I believe. So that huge nerf for Disobedience. So I like the way Disobedience and Juggernaut kind of were counteractive. If you're using a class that attacked a ton, like let's say a Rogue or something like that, or like a Sword, you could keep your Disobedience stacks up, and then you wouldn't have to give up the increased cooldown on your evade. And people could say evade's irrelevant. I don't really think so, especially when you get to harder content. I think it could be very useful. And then some classes need evade for certain things, like let's say rapid fire evade is huge for that. But I thought there was a trade-off there where Juggernaut was just flat armor, but you had the increased evade cooldown. Where Disobedience, you had to build it up, but there was no trade-off in terms of losing out on evade or anything like that. Now it just seems like Disobedience just isn't that good, and Juggernaut's just going to be the way to go, which I don't really understand this one, to be honest with you. Okay, so we go down here. There's a bunch of changes here. I'm just going to kind of go over the pretty big ones in my opinion. So I forget actually what this is. I forget exactly what this was, but it's now usable by both Barbarians and Druids. I think this was just Barbs before. I forget, though, but that's pretty interesting. And this is basically going over a lot of right here, I should say, is basically, so Necro, so they're minions, and then Druid pets, Barbarian, I'm not sure what companions they are. Oh, they're the guys you call from the Call of the Ancients, sorry. And then Sorcerer Companions, which is the Conjurations, I believe, will now receive 100%. I'm not really sure what the Sorcerer Companions is, honestly. 100% of the player's attributes. So they're massively buffing all those. And they really want to, I guess, create new ways to play is the way I see it. So as we go down here, Barbs got nerfed pretty much across the board. So one thing, like I said, legendary powers that require Call of the Ancients to be equipped no longer have that requirement. And then, but their 10% innate damage reduction has been removed. That's a pretty big deal. Charge nerfed. Hoda nerfed. Rend actually buffed, because Rend wasn't that good. Rupture actually buffed. Call of the Ancients buffed. There's Kick, all this other stuff. Unbridled Range nerfed, because that was the best one by far. They changed around the expertise. I think the main thing to note here is the two-hand expertise got nerfed. That's the one that most people gravitated to. So that got a 5% nerf. And then I think one important thing to mention here too, I'm not going to go over every Paragon change or anything like that, but the Blood Rage. So this was the one that was huge. If you just stacked a bunch of damage while berserking, not only did you get increased damage while berserking, but it just increased your flat damage bonus up to people who are getting like 90%, I think, and now caps at 30. And you also, so your damage increased by berserking is reduced from 25% down to 10, so that's a huge nerf. This one was like a must run, no matter what, and you would just have to run damage while berserking and everything. So I actually like the change, honestly. Barbs needed a nerf. I know people don't love nerfs, But I think just to bring in a line and to just be able to balance the game, it did need that. So as we go down here, I mean, a bunch more stuff. Earth Striker got nerfed. That was used a ton. So the Walking Arsenal got some buffs here. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff with Dust Devils right here. Basically, TLDR of this, you can go back and look at the patch notes yourself. But Dust Devils are basically getting buffed across the board. I think Double Swing Dust Devils might be really, really good. So, like, here's the one where Double Swing casts a Dust Devil. I think that might be really good to help with that AoE clear. And then also those gloves might be good with it as well, too. So as we scroll down here, one other, I think, pretty noticeable change is, and they keep mentioning shout skills with druids, by the way, because they're tagging some things as shout skills, like debilitating roar for druids. I think that's why they are mentioning that there in the barbarian section. This right here, so this is actually used a lot during like the gauntlet and stuff. So for speed running, so previously you had to inflict bleeding on elites. Now it's just any enemy, but it is reduced from 1.5 down to 1 second. Probably overall a buff though, I would say. And then Azarath, I believe this can now be used by all classes. And this, I think, will be really good for Rogue specifically. It was pretty horrible for Barbarian. Didn't really make a lot of sense why I was on there, but it is getting basically a buff and is now usable by all classes. For Druid, some changes to Spirit Boons, buffing some ones that weren't used as much. Claw got a buff. Maul got a buff. Pulverize got a little buff. Shred, I love to see this, got a little bit of a buff. Big Shred enthusiast. Like I said, debilitating roar, narrow shout skill. And then Wolves, they're now unstoppable because they could get stunned and stuff when the skill is. They're not unstoppable when the skill is cast, but because before they could get stunned and crowd controlled and stuff like that. Petrify, this one's actually pretty interesting. So previously, Prime Petrify was Petrify's effect durations are increased by 1 second. Now Petrify grants 50 spirit when cast, and its effect durations are increased by 1 second. So that got a buff, and Petrify was already really good. And this used to be kind of like the second node, the Supreme. You gain spirit on kill. But now the Supreme, it used to be killing an enemy affected by Petrify grants 25 spirit. Now killing an enemy affected by Petrify reduces its cooldown by 1 second. And then hitting a boss with Petrify reduces its cooldown by 10 seconds. So this paired with the Exonerable Will Ring means you could probably Petrify up basically like all the time. And then you combine that with Flicker Step too. You might not even have to run Flicker Step now because of this. So pretty interesting, honestly. Lacerate, they buffed. They showed that in the campfire chat. Some passives here. They made some changes. They want you to shapeshift more is basically what I'm getting out of this. They took away the DR and they granted bonus damage reduction for werebears and movement speed for werewolves from this heightened sense right here. And you can actually get this with Hunter Zenith, so you can stack this pretty high. And then going down here, they increased even more movement speed for werewolves, which is pretty cool. They buffed the Blurred Beast, which they nerfed into the ground. They made a nice change to this one. Right here when you would have to deal damage to poison enemies. Now hitting a poison enemy as a werebear or a crowd control enemy as a werewolf. So this could be really good for some werewolf builds. Buffing the Shred one right here too could be nice, especially because you're pretty much always casting about 50 spirit if you're using, what's the ring called? Starless Skies. Could be a nice 25% maybe multiplicative damage increase. We'll have to see. As we scroll down here, Rat skills also gain damage increase from companions. So that's pretty interesting. I think there's several things here to help trample, like a trample landslide build might be pretty good. But as we go down, that's, I think, most of the notable things. Yeah, they have this thing. So like I said, there's shouts now for druids as well too. Some changes to the Paragon board. I'm not going to go over all of these. And then the legendary node Inner Beast. So this one's a little bit interesting. So this is gonna, they really, like I said, want people to run more builds that it seems like are shape-shifting a whole bunch. So this also helps a lot. So it's up to 45% now instead of 30. And then if you reach 10 stacks, the bonus resets. It reduces the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 5 seconds. That could be pretty interesting in my opinion. But down to Necromancer. So Blood Mist, they removed, the movement speed reduction. So that's pretty big because you used to move like a snail when you went into Blood Mist before. So we'll have to see maybe Infinimus builds, how that affects them and things like that. Made a whole bunch of changes to Decompose, pretty much buffs across the board. Army of the Dead buffs. Going down here, I wanted to mention, so the Book of the Dead is basically completely reworked and basically buffs across the board for minions, which is really nice to see because people have been begging for that since release, essentially. But I think that's really nice. Changes and more buffs like here down to minions. So many buffs to minions. Decompose as well too. Bunch of things to that. And then changes to the Ring of Medallions. I don't know how to say that. But again, more buffs to that. And then some changes to the Paragon board. Again, a lot of things with minions as well too. So basically for Necro, it's basically all in on minions. Not too much else has changed, although I think those Blood Surge gloves could be really nice. I think those could be really good, actually. So, Rogue, just baseline. The base stun duration is increased from 0.5 to 1, so doubled. Like I said, they really did a lot with grenades here. So Inner Sight, I don't love this one, honestly. I like how it's easier to fill. I wish instead of this critical strike chance, it was a damage multiplier or maybe even bolt, because I still think combo points is probably going to reign supreme. But they did, if you go down here, buff the legendary node, Liarnia's Instinct, which has to deal with Inner Sight. So instead of just doing 2 seconds, it does it for the whole 4 seconds while it remains full. So while it remains full, I'm actually not sure if that means when it's full or when you actually use it. I'm actually not positive on that. So either way, they're buffing it. Buffing Flurry, a little bit of a buff to Preparation, a little bit of buff to Victimize. Again, so Encircling Blades, I believe this is the Flurry one. They're pushing Flurry, but like I said, Barrage got another buff, and it was already like the best skill. So I think that still might be really good. Then you have a whole bunch of things with a lot of the aspects for grenades, where it just basically buffs all of them, which is pretty interesting. Like I said, they're kind of going all in on that. I think a very interesting one down here is Frostbitten. Before they had to be chilled for a chance to be frozen, and then you dealt up to 25% increased crit strike damage against the frozen enemies. Now they don't. Now they can just be any enemies, so you don't have to run anything to chill, and then you can still take the Frigid Finesse skill, the passive skill, and you can still get a huge damage increase without running something like Penance and Greaves or something like that. Could be pretty interesting. But as we scroll down here, some changes to some trap skills, things like that. So I don't see anything crazy here. They made this, the thing they added from the Malignant Heart, the Malignant Ring, whatever it's called. They buffed that a little bit because it was pretty much unanimously the worst one. So that's nice to see. And then we go to Sork here. So they mentioned this mastery skills are now considered core skills, so you'll be able to buff them in different ways. And then going down, so the Flame Shield, again, I kind of read this wrong during the campfire chat. So they're basically taking away the cheat debt mechanic of it. So it can't just be once you take fatal damage, you basically just cast it and you're good to go. Now it'll be cumulative after losing 100 life, and that can happen once every 30 seconds. So still not bad, but definitely not the same kind of cheat debt mechanic it was before. Frozen Orbs getting a very nice buff. Ice Armor also getting a pretty nice buff as well too. They're changing around Frost Nova a little bit, specifically the Shimmering Frost Nova. Basically upping the dodge chance like a bunch, and then it gives you a way to regenerate mana, which is pretty cool. They're changing Flame Shield, which is pretty cool. So now it will be mana cost reduction, which I think is better. And then after it ends, you stun all enemies around you, and the next skill you cast is guaranteed to critical strike. I actually like that change. So Teleport got a change where now you gain movement speed instead of decreasing the cooldown to combat that basically infinite teleport build that was so good for the Gauntlet. And then Going down here, you got some different things, conjurations. Most of it's been buffed, the conjurations, I should say. And then you got some different things with some passives down here. And then as we go down, just a bunch of basically buffs to basically lesser used skills, a bunch of conjurations, things like that. And that is all the classes. I know I didn't go into depth into every single thing, but you can obviously look at the patch notes yourself. So I went into what I thought was the most important. But they basically, final things here, the buff most elixirs, and then they added 2 new ones. Okay. So, and I think one interesting thing about this elixir is they increased the experience gain too, so it's going to help you level up even faster. But this elixir of holy bolts, after killing an enemy, holy bolts fire from the corpse of that enemy. That looks pretty nuts. I wonder where you get that. It doesn't say. And then this momentum after killing an enemy, increase movement speed by 3% for 5 seconds. It can stack up to 15 times, so you'll be flying. Bolt's pretty cool in my opinion. I wonder how these bolts seem really powerful, so I wonder if they're just like hell tide drops or something. I'm not sure. Some UI changes, probably a good thing for the most part. So this trials. So this is good. So if you earn a seal of the worthy, you get a 100% chance of being rewarded a unique item. The rewards are utter trash before. And then I'm not exactly sure, unless this is recently added to the gauntlet, which I haven't played in a couple weeks now. Mutterlock chest now additionally dropped 500 obols. I'm not entirely sure exactly what that is. There's the new Nightmare Dungeons, which kind of look irrelevant for this season, just based on the way, just based on the pit and the way they're pushing everyone towards that. Bunch of bug fixes and things like that. And then I believe that is everything. So yeah, that's going to be the full patch notes. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown. I think it's mostly good changes here. I think I like what they're doing. We'll have to get our hands on the PTR in the next few days and see, in actuality what we like. And I hope people are giving their feedback, and I hope they actually implement those changes. So that would be really nice. And like I said, I think, again, this is another trend in the right direction. They have to hit a home run, though. This has to be a home run. These changes need to be good. So obviously, we'll see when we get our hands on the PTR. But it's been the Butcher. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.